All right, of course, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Of course, it's King Bongier of the Victorious Ones podcast with an impromptu um, interview. In regard, because this weekend it's going to be a BlerDCon weekend, and so especially when it comes to the wrestling panel, and and of course, I have a guest that's going to be, should be coming, going to be coming on pretty much very shortly. Of course, first and foremost, I want to wish my dad a happy birthday. He turned 70 today for those that have seen on social media. You know what I mean? So chapter 70. I'm looking to celebrate with him, a little bit later this evening. But yeah, but of course, like I say, in regards to this weekend's, I guess this weekend's wrestling panel, of course, this Saturday in BlerDCon, the panel is going to be an all-star Hall of Fame panel, if you will, when it comes to podcasters and things like that. Going to feature those wrestling girls, as well as Jobbeteers and Black Wrestling Podcast. I guess I gave the lead away. Spoiler alert. You know what I mean? But of course, I'm going to be interviewing someone who's very pivotal, very influential when it comes to this thing that we're doing that we call podcasting. So like I said, this is a very impromptu interview, and so it should be, like I said, it's going to be pretty much an exclusive, if you will. You know what I mean? So it's like I said, it's going to be an exclusive interview, if you will. And so, yeah, sorry about that. As far as that's concerned, like I said, this guy's very instrumental. He's someone who's able to bring all of us together. Almost like Voltron or something like that. Bring us together almost like Infinity Stones or whatever. You know what I mean? But this guy's been part of the other podcasts and wrestling space world for a very long time. If anything, he's the godfather. You know what I mean? He's an innovator. He's a pioneer. He's met all type of wrestlers, past and present. As well as those on the indies. You know what I mean? So this guy is a wrestling historian. You know what I mean? An encyclopedia, if you will. Someone who, like I say, he bridges. Sorry about that. Like I said, he's someone who bridges generations, bridges different age groups, bridges different perspectives, and and whatnot. And so, like I said, I'm very grateful, to have him as a guest. And he's someone who's been on my list for a while in terms of someone that wanted to bring on the show. And so, of course, I'm doing this, of course, out of respect for him as well as the schedule. You know what I mean? So, like I say, and of course, like I say, I guess it's pretty much talking him up. At least until otherwise. But yeah, like I say, he's none other than Docta D from Docta D's Wrestling Showcase, the firm, and everything like that. And so of course, he's a wrestling historian. He's a huge fan of classic wrestling when it comes to 70s and 80s, things like that, especially when it comes to the NWA. Even has the other NWA, the original NWA World Heavyweight Championship. I'm talking about the one that the Harley Race used to have. The one that Flair originally had is the one that has a silver globe on it. And I believe he has he's a whole bunch of titles. If anything, he's the one that's influenced so many of us when it comes to belt collectors. You know what I mean? And so, and of course, like just when it comes to his impact, when it comes as far as media itself, not just wrestling, but just media, period. You know what I mean? Like I see, he's very well versed, well renowned, very well renowned. You know what I mean? He's someone who's very well respected, revered. Like I mean? So like a guy that like a guy who's goes back to the days of the Ric Flairs, your Dustys, Harley Races, Four Horse. Like I said, the days of Four Horsemen, Dusty, Harley Race. As far like the Koloffs, Von Erichs, you name it. You know what I mean? Like this guy's influence is like I said is very much. Like I said, is very monumental. Like I said, very monumental, very impactful when it comes to wrestling, when it comes to podcasting. Someone who is an expert when it comes to podcasts, and for him to, like I said, for him to be a guest on anybody's show is an honor. Is what you call putting someone over. You know what I mean? And so, when he's a guest on your show, and you have, it's like having that seal of approval. You know what I mean? Like lets you know that let you know that you're doing something. You know what I mean? And like I said, like I said, like I said, like I said, absolute honor. To at least have the chance to like I said, to have conversations with him, to you know what I mean, to be able to like I said, like I said, to be able to network with him, as far as build relationships and things like that. You know what I mean? So, the thing is, his ear is to, to the culture, if you will, when it comes to, getting a great understanding of the ins and outs of wrestling, and, like I said, his knowledge and his wisdom, his expertise, is, I said, as I've said before, I want to sound like a broken record, is very much appreciated. You know what I mean? Like, he's someone that's very well respected, like I said, from the likes of Jobber Tears, Black Wrestling, you name it, just about. You know what I mean? Like you name it. And like say, when it comes to like some of the most pivotal needle movers when it comes to like this, wrestling space and things like that, they are very grateful and very appreciative of what Doctor D brings to the table. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, this is, like I said, very impromptu. I just want him to, to give the rundown of, of what to expect at, of course, at this weekend's BlerDCon, when it comes to this weekend's, like I said, like I said, when it comes to this weekend's wrestling panel, especially. And I've gone to his wrestling panel for the past 2 years. And so this weekend is going to be my third straight year. And, and the dialogues and, just the discussions and are just absolutely amazing. You know what I mean? So of course, it's a time that, to really, it's definitely a time, for people to really go, slow down. It's definitely a great time, for so many people to get, to get a lot of stuff off their chest in terms of their takes, in terms of predictions, in terms of, their thoughts on, on the world of wrestling, the week in wrestling, in terms of like, the podcast origins, like where they, when they started, where they started, how they started, I mean, like those type of things, are brought to the forefront during these wrestling panels. And one of the things that, I've seen Doc do is go back and find like the earliest footage of each podcast, and just and not for the sake of like embarrassing anybody, but for the sake of showing their growth, from where they were then to where they are now. And and it's absolutely mind blowing to see how many of these people have grown by leaps and bounds. When it comes to their expertise on wrestling, when it comes to the takes that they give, when it comes to just their experiences overall in general. You know what I mean? So and the thing about it is that when you're doing a podcast, anything, when you're in this medium, you definitely want to know what you're talking about. And like I said, it's one thing to have an opinion, but at the same time, make sure that it has credibility behind it. And I'm pretty sure that that's one of the things that I know for sure is one of the things that that Doc definitely looks for. You know what I mean? So the thing about it is that, like I said, pretty much. All right, there. Yeah, but anyway, like I said, like I said, I'm, sorry about that, but yeah, like I said, that so, it's like when it comes to, like I said, just when it comes to wrestling media, that there's nobody better, more there's nobody more influential, that there's nobody who's a greater influence, a greater blueprint, when it comes to just the foundation of, sorry about that. Yeah. So, yeah, so like I said, the thing about it is that, the thing about it is that, there's nobody more, like I said, more pivotal when it comes to this wrestling media podcast space, other than somebody like Doctor D. So the thing is, he's definitely a pioneer. Much like, I'm pretty sure he's gonna like this reference. Much like, those, such as your Harley Races, your Ric Flairs, Bruno's, you name it. You know what I mean? When it comes to this type of space, he is definitely that kind of guy. So yeah, sorry about that, but yeah, what I mean. So as far as that, you know, like I said, just when it comes to his influence, when it comes to his impact, and like I said, and so many things that I've learned from him in terms of his history, in terms of his perspective, in terms of just in terms of just so much knowledge and history, and just being able to tap in with I should say, sorry about that. Like I said, sorry about that. And the thing about it is it's just that, like I said, it's just with the way that he's able to tap into wrestling culture, and just have his finger on the pulse of what's going on, and like I said, and just the eye that he has for talent, the eye that he has, I said, the eye that he has for talent when it comes to wrestlers, and his eye for talent when it comes to podcasters, eye and ear for talent, excuse me, especially when it comes to podcasters, when it comes to like I said, when it comes to those within this media space. And so like I said, to have, I said, to have an endorsement from him means a lot. You know what I mean? So what I mean, like I say, and like I say, and the thing about it is that so many of us, they're belt collectors, like myself. I only got 2 so far, and of course, not only that, but his nephew Corey, who's definitely following his footsteps, step by step. You know what I mean? Like he's massive, if not probably even surpass. I don't want to surpass, but excuse me. But the thing is, he's learned a lot from him when it comes to being a wrestling encyclopedia. When it comes to collecting belts, when it comes to, all right. And speaking of, of course, my apologies in advance ahead of time. This, like I said, of course, as I've said his name over and over, and here he is, a special guest of honor, the host of the wrestling panel himself, none other than Doctor D. How you doing? Sorry about that.
Can you hear me, Vaughn?
I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, cool. How you feeling?
I'm doing great. How about you?
All righty.
All right. Yeah. So of course, earlier I was telling everybody about about your knowledge and expertise when it comes to your history of wrestling, and your and of course your wrestling panel that you're about to have, that you have every year for BlerDCon. So if you want to of course let us know, give more detail than what I gave about your of course Dr. D's wrestling panel.
So BlerDCon started back in 2017, and at that time it wasn't the large attendance that you see today, and that's getting ready to go down this weekend. It was pretty much starting off small, and at that time there was, you may not have even recognized any wrestling fans there except one person who had on a Bullet Club shirt. And that was pretty much it. So during the end of BlerDCon, when they had their closing ceremony, which again was not was in one of the smaller rooms, I had asked the founders at the time, Hilton and Hassan, were there any wrestling panels? And they said they had one signed up, but they didn't show up. So they didn't have any, but they would love to have wrestling panels. So following year is where it all began. The second year of BlerDCon, where I started the Wrestling Dream panels, and it's taken off from there.
I see it has. It's taken over by, by leaps and bounds. And so, and the thing is, like, I'm pretty sure you remember, like, who were some of the, like, the first, like, the early guests when it came to your dream panels?
Well, in the beginning, it's always been myself, my nephew Corey, Brian H. Waters of the Wrestling Realm. At that time, we had the Wrestling Realm with Dwayne Allen, my friend Marcus K. Dallins, who was a longtime manager in the indies in our area, but he was also the founder of Capital Wrestling in New Jersey, which is now known as Catalyst Wrestling. So, and also the X-Man, Xavier Anderson, who of course was a long time indie, a long time indie wrestler out of Delaware, but he was also part of a show in Montgomery County called Inside the Square Circle. So throughout the years, became close with every last one of them, and we really at the time had kept this thing going. And then of course it evolved with different guests from people like Candice Cordelia to Amber Rodriguez. We even, of course, had wrestlers come down and stop by, such as Chris Slade and Dino, names like that. But of course, this year we're bringing in the Jobber Tears. We're bringing in those wrestling girls. We're bringing in Black Wrestling. So, and we're, of course, CZW Hall of Famer Larry Legend will be returning as well. So he will be my co-host this time throughout all the panels this year. So been grateful to have it evolve and have pretty much standing room only attendance.
Yeah, I see it. Like, and the thing is, the first time that I was part of, like I said, I was part of the, like, I attended a wrestling panel, at least in the audience, was in 2021,
Yeah.
and that was the first time I met Fam from Black Wrestling.
Uh-huh.
And so, like I said, from there, and then last year grew even more. Of course, like, we had Britt Waters on Friday. I couldn't make it to that one, but yeah, Black Wrestling and Jobber, or at least Janelle from Jobber Tears to represent.
Yeah.
So as far as that, and also one of the things, like I said, is great discussion, great dialogue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And also, like, for people to give off their takes and things like that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I appreciate that you do is how you have those early videos. I don't know if you can hear me, but if you have
Yeah.
those early videos from when they started,
Yeah.
just, and as I was saying before you came on, and just to show the growth to where they are now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to use the example. It's almost like showing somebody their baby pictures or kid pictures, and then you
Right.
see where
Right.
they
Right.
are now. It's not for the sake of embarrassing them. The person who's the subject may feel like it's embarrassing, but what you're doing is you're showing the progress that they made.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and what I mean, like I said, I appreciate that perspective, that input that you do, and also, the thing is, I also wanted to ask, like, how is it that you're able to, like, merge these different, like, have these connections with all these different, like, podcasts from different networks, like I said, and just, the way the way that you're able to branch out, and so, like, bring them together almost like infinity stones or something.
Well, it's pretty much the fact that as we have grown, especially since the pandemic, we started to connect from there. I mean, of course, if you're in the DMV, Baltimore, Richmond, and Eastern, and even Eastern Shore, and you've already had that following by making those connections, then it branches out to up in the East Coast of New York and New Jersey. And of course, shout out to Brian H. Waters for really making those connections during the pandemic when he sent me links to Jobber Tears and those wrestling girls and also black wrestling. And once the pandemic had lifted, we started seeing each other in person. And first time we met the Jobber Tears was when they just happened to be in Baltimore for Ring of Honor's final battle. Ring of Honor's final battle, and everything took off from there. And of course, Corey already had connections, knowing them, going up in New York and everything like that. So it's a matter of the fact that the connections were already there. But once everybody started to get connected, it became very, very instant. And the fact is, everybody pretty much have the same perspectives. They're like-minded in terms of um, how they conduct their business and everything like that, and of course the love of wrestling as well. So it's become a beautiful relationship to have all these different entities together.
Yeah, you're right. You know what I mean? You're absolutely right, sir, because of the fact that so many of them, I noticed there's a common ground with a lot of them when it comes to Brian H. Corey, when it comes to Jobber Tears and Black Wrestling. The thing is, like, they all have a passion when it comes to wrestling, when it comes to um, understanding the inner workings of wrestling, the business, and having a mind for it, and the way they're able to analyze, along with just having their own like personalities and whatnot. And the thing is, even though they may not have all have the same favorites per se, but a lot of them that they do like are pretty much within the same conversation. If I'm trying to like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
You don't
Yeah.
have to like the same things and so forth, but there's always a respect of the fact that why they're thinking what they're thinking. I'm very excited, speaking of which, to have the Jobber Tears in, because if people know Sir Wilkins, Wilkins don't hold any punches. So I'm sure Wilkins will be ready to go.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, because the thing is, I know Janelle was saying that she was going to bring the whole team with it. Like last year, she was saying that she was going to bring everybody, for this year.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I even had them on my show, before. And so, and the thing is, it's absolutely truth. They do not bite their tongue.
Yeah.
And the thing about them is that even when they are on somebody else's platform as a guest, it feels like an extension of some of their own episodes to a certain degree.
Yeah,
So, that
exactly.
type of thing. Yeah, you know what I mean. So like, and I was thinking about that yesterday. I was like, yeah, this is like one of those things where they. It's important to have somebody that knows how to set the tone, how to be the thermostat, if you will, and
Hmm.
and just change the culture. And I believe that that the names like that you Brian and Corey have networked with are able to do that. So I look forward to to the talks that you're going to have
Yeah.
on there as well. And so, and also another thing I wanted to bring up, especially when it comes to your eye for talent, as I brought up before, especially when it comes to like, the different wrestlers that you've seen all throughout history. You know what I mean? All
Hmm.
throughout, like I said, when it comes to, this. In fact, I wanted to ask you, like, what was your genesis when it comes to like wrestling, if you will?
Say it again.
Your genesis as far as like the beginning, like when you first became a fan,
Oh, when I first became a fan,
yeah,
yeah.
first chapter.
So it goes back to the late '70s. Growing up in Newark, New Jersey, when I used to watch WWF. That's my furthest memory, and remembering Vince McMahon as an announcer, and Bruno Sammartino also, and he was announcing as well. I think Pat Patterson was announcing as well, as they were still wrestling, and of course Andre the Giant. Those were my furthest memories. And then when I moved to the DMV in the late '70s, early '80s, that's when you started to get back into it, when Hulkamania was beginning, and also the NWA with the Horsemen and Dusty and Magnum, Rock and Roll, those names alone. So pretty much Road Warriors, of course, pretty much that promotion, Jim Crockett Promotions, is what I gravitated to the most in the 80s. So those what you would say is my early days of when I really started becoming a wrestling fan.
I could tell because the thing is like when I hear you talk, and even with some of the posts that you put on social media, I can tell that has shaped your perspective into who you are now in
Yeah.
terms of your knowledge and expertise. That's like um, the main reference point that I've always seen you use. When it comes to NWA, when it comes to, because the thing is, even now that impact is still felt. Like the
Yeah.
Four Horsemen, when it comes to the Road Warriors, who's still in the conversation for being the greatest of all time.
Yes.
When it comes to, just when it comes to like the Rock and Roll Express, how they were the pioneers. Without them, you wouldn't have you wouldn't have Midnight Express, the Rockers, like whoever you want to name, the Hardy Boys, New Day, all all these.
You're talking about pioneers. You mentioned those names such as Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, the Midnight Rockers, and of course the British Bulldogs and the Art Foundation as well. So and the Fabulous Freebirds and the Von Erichs, lots of names. And when people say when tag teams were tag teams, so it's of course we know it's a totally different era today, but when you learn about what wrestling was like when I was growing up, and you get a chance to meet and talk to these legends and find out, what was the reason for this to happen and this to happen, then it gives you a great feeling for them being able to share their knowledge and being able to understand why the legends are who they are and why their business was so prevalent in the shape of what pro wrestling is today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's most certainly, because the thing is with teams like that, with names like that, they're the blueprint that so
Yes.
many others have followed years and years later. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so yeah, so sorry to interrupt. Sorry to, as far as that, but yeah, like I said, when it comes to, oh, yeah, no problem, no problem.
Yeah, okay. Just turn my
Yeah,
hair on. Go ahead.
yeah, don't worry. Yeah, don't worry about it. But yeah, like I was saying, the thing is with those names, they are pretty much like the blueprint, the standard that so many other wrestlers are measured by. And so I've asked people this before. If you were to um, start a promotion, right,
Hmm.
and you needed to have your figurehead, your franchise star, right, um, past or present, who would that name be that you would build your promotion around?
Past or present?
Yeah, like your first overall pick.
You know what? I'm gonna throw this name out here because everyone gravitates towards another guy in this promotion, but being that I've known him from when he began in the Indies here in Maryland, and for what he's doing right now in that very same promotion, and because I'm biased towards him versus what others may see in their the top talent that's there. I'm gonna go to NXT and bring Wesley.
Oh,
I'm gonna go to
that's a great one.
NXT and build it around Wesley. I can say this because I look at Wesley as my Ricky Steamboat. I look at Wesley as my Ricky Steamboat. I've seen him, of course, when he's one of my day ones. I've seen him at MCW when he first started as a jobber, and then he took off from there. And of course, with everything that he has done in TNA and now in NXT, from what he done with the Rascals, aka MSK, to now being the North American champion, I see how lots of the WWE universe gravitate towards him in his matches the same way people had gravitated towards Steamboat or even Ricky Morton, because it's like Wesley draws your attention. He's that guy that people genuinely love, and every time when his matches get to that very end and they become successful, you feel it. You feel the energy that they give towards him. So I would build it around Wesley.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a deep answer, and I like the way that you explained it from
Yeah.
from top to bottom, because I never knew that. Excuse me, move up. I never knew that Wesley was an MCW. I
Yes.
never even knew that. So thanks for opening my eyes to that.
Yes.
And I actually met Wesley, took a picture with him at Wally Mania.
Okay.
And so yeah, and plus, great to see that he's kept the title. And when it comes to the Steamboat thing, I definitely see that example. I see that analogy where you're coming from, because
Yeah.
it's because of that humility when it comes to just being just a natural baby face, someone who's beloved,
Yes.
someone that you can never say a bad word about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and the things, he's a quintessential type of face.
Yeah.
So and the thing is, he's also under that Shawn Michaels tree of influence, just like Carmelo.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
I definitely see that, because that's his equivalent of the IC title, and Melo
Yes.
has the equivalent of the WWF title with the NXT Championship.
Yes.
And so, would you say, since you mentioned Wesley as Steamboat, with the right chemistry, would you say that Melo would be his Savage?
That's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it. I would even think that if it heads there, which I think it could and should be,
Yeah.
we could see a bit of a Mello versus West in the style of maybe Brett versus HBK. Not necessarily have to be an Iron Man, because Brett and HBK had numerous matches before and after that. But when it comes to, I guess that I guess that face versus face, if that's the thing, or just out of the sake of competition, the nature of competition, knowing how both these promotions tend to have not both of these competitors have a tend to be able to perform in the best way possible. I think a West versus Hayes would be an interesting draw. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you can say Savage, Steamboat, Brett, Sean. Yeah, I would put Mello and Hayes as that. Mello, Hayes, Kamala Hayes, and Wes Lee as that particular good main event.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, especially considering who is running NXT right now, Shawn,
Yeah,
shout out to Shawn Michaels, and and
yeah,
with ideas that he's implemented and the vision that he has, I could see him throwing something in there like that as well, because of what he's done with the ladder match in there, also with the JC and Gigi, like that rockers type of angle, if you will. So
hmm
I would not be surprised, only a matter of time before eventually they collide, and I could definitely see that, because West does have certain, like, Brett qualities in
hmm
terms of his character, and Mello is Sean all over, from the
yeah,
glasses, the swagger, you name it. That is like HBK
exactly.
Junior type of thing. And what I mean. So like I said, I'm glad that you brought up Wesley as and also he made the top 5 in the BRP 50, and Mello was number 2 on that list.
Correct.
Yeah. So as far as that, I definitely like to see the mark. If anything, the mark that they've left, and also, like, when it comes to local wrestlers, I know you ran the Trisha Dora numerous times. Have you run the real? Pretty sure you've run the Leo Rush before, since he's from this area, from Lanham anyway. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah, no, Leo's another day one. I mean, I've known him when he first started, when he was still working security at MCW, and his dad, who I'm also cool with, is a successful. He has his own media company here in PG, WBGR. So
wow,
he does a lot in terms of the gospel as well as the sports scene. So so whenever I get a chance to run into uh Leo Senior, as I call him, and his wife, Leo Junior's mom, Leslie. Yeah, it's always that, that catching up on old times and so forth. And Leo I run into every now and then as well. Run into every now and then as well. So um, I know he's making his return to CZW pretty soon too. So yeah,
wow.
yeah,
And see, that's the thing I like about you, Doc. I'm not gonna hold you up, hold up your time or anything. But the thing is, I like how you have those stories that make things even more interpersonal. Like
yeah,
say, like the relationships that see that's important. That's why it's important for the relationships that you build.
yes,
You know,
yeah,
because the thing is, you see a side of them and have stories from them that others are not, familiar with. You know what I mean? So like I said, that's very pivotal. You know what I mean? That's key as well. And so, you know what I mean? And also, like I said, also like the thing is, um, I know that a few weeks ago, VRP kind of came up, not just with the VRP 50, but they were just kind of like out of thin air, just ran up like their own sort of like Mount Rushmore of wrestling and just came up with different ideas and different names. So, who would be on your wrestling Mount Rushmore?
Well, see, here's the thing: when people talk about their Mount Rushmores, pro wrestling, I always gravitate towards who has taken who has taken wrestling to the next level when it came to mainstream and sports, and when it became sports entertainment. Now you kind of have your different sets of Mount Rushmore, so I'm gonna stick with the ones that really had made their um, made that groundbreaking uh, way of pop culture. And of course, Hulk Hogan would be the first one right off the bat, and then would be Stone Cold, and then would be The Rock, and then lastly, of course, would be John Cena. So it's a matter of, you could look at it that way, or you could look at it from the wrestling aspect, where of course it could go either way. It could be Flair, it could be Dusty, it could be Brett, Sean. It's a mixture of what really is considered to be your top four in terms of from a wrestling aspect, to also an aspect of uh, turning it into a pop culture form where it became mainstream, because all those four that I've mentioned, they've all started, pretty much no different than those with the wrestling background, is that everybody learned the fundamentals. Hogan, people can talk about Hogan, what have you, in terms of him not being able to wrestle. Well, Hogan was trained by Shogun Hiro Matsuda, same guy that trained Lex Luger, same guy that trained Ron Simmons down in Florida. He was Eddie Graham's guy. He was the Graham's guy down in Championship Wrestling in Florida. So he was the guy that you had to go through, because Hogan can wrestle in Japan. If you look at his All Japan, New Japan uh, um, uh, matches back in the day, and when you talk about Stone Cold, well, everybody knows Stone Cold was trained by the originator of the super kick, Gentleman Chris Adams.
That's right.
And of course, The Rock. I mean, it goes without saying where his background comes from. And John Cena is trained in California. Rick Bassman, UPW, same guy who trained Samoa Joe, same guy that brought Sting, that brought Ultimate Warrior. Those particular names, I believe that was the name, Rick Bassman from UPW. So yeah, it's a matter of all of them coming in with pretty much the same foundational skills. But if you're the if you're at the mindset of understanding that you can make money out of this the way Hogan had made money out of it, Austin, Rock, Cena, if you understand the entertainment aspect, then yeah, those four names would be considered in my Mount Rushmore.
I think so as well. Like when it comes to commercial, mainstream, transcending sport type of Mount Rushmore, then like I said, when it comes to just being objective, straight to the point, those guys will make it in because the thing that people have to realize that when it comes to WWE, their style is less is more. So
Exactly.
because the thing is Vince has always known that here in America our attention spans are like that much.
Exactly.
So the thing is you go with your go-to arsenal. You know what I mean? It's like at a concert, you don't sing stuff from the latest album. People want to hear the greatest hits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so when they're in the ring, they're giving the greatest hits.
Exactly.
So you know what I mean? So as far as that, I definitely understand where you're coming from. And I'm glad that you mentioned like other Mount Rushmores because that's a conversation I always get stuck on because it's just like there's so many different like variations that I want to use. Mainstream Mount Rushmore, technical wrestler Mount Rushmore and stuff like that. I would have like Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Kurt Angle, and like Eddie Guerrero, maybe type of thing on there. And so it always varies. So I'm glad that you brought that up as well. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So like I said, and that's why it's important to have a perspective like yours, and for others to understand a different angle from what they're seeing now,
Mm-hmm.
and different angle from especially what they see on Twitter. My gosh, like I mean, that's a seriously, yeah. I ain't even going to that.
Yeah.
That's toxic in and of itself. So you know what I mean. So that's why, and see, that's a big reason why I started my podcast, my platform, is because it's just like I heard too many like ridiculous takes. You can't stop them, but it's a great way to like, to kind of like combat it. You know what I mean? So to have have knowledge and know what you're talking about is
Mm-hmm.
very important. You know what I mean? And also, like I said, talk to people about, the thing. It was easy for me to come up with a top 50 list before I came up with the Mount Rushmore list. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And speaking of, where do you see Roman when it comes to this sort of climb towards history?
You've asked this question before back at HBCUCon, and to understand where I was coming from, you have to look at the difference between saying greatest of all time
Mm-hmm.
and greatest of our time.
Mm.
Roman is indeed the greatest of our time.
Right.
Roman is indeed the greatest of our time, but for him to be all time, you still gonna have to convince not just myself, but the legends that I've talked to in this game
Mm.
and the Hall of Famers that I've talked to in this game on why Roman may still not be at a Bruno Sammartino level, why he still may not be at a Hogan level, even though we're seeing him pretty much getting close to I mean, I know that he's broken one of Hogan's title reigns,
Pedro's.
not his initial, but put it like this: he could very well by Mania 40 surpass let's say Bruno's second title reign. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
that's how I analyze that. So again, when people talk about of all time, that's pretty much, almost over a half a century of our time span has been when it came to what pro wrestling would really become. Because again, in the era in the early days of television in the 50s was when pro wrestling became more visible versus listening to it in the 40s on over the radio. And from looking at it in terms of when when let's just say it had more of that realism. It had more of that realism, and matches went from 90 minutes to 2 hours, just one match.
Gosh.
You look it up. You do your research on the history of some of these matches. In fact, I still got to order this book, but my mentor, WWE Hall of Famer Johnny Rodz, he introduced me to a book about what pro wrestling was like maybe 2 centuries ago, and someone had recorded that and wrote a book about it. So I was glancing over that, and I was like, wow, these matches pretty much were the norm at that time before the Gold Dust Trio came in and had modernized it into what would become the sports entertainment. So y'all got to look up the Gold Dust Trio, because we're not talking about Dustin Runnels. We're talking about three. We're talking about three guys in the early 50s that pretty much were the ones that shaped what pro wrestling would become today.
Wow, Gold
Yes.
Dust Trio. I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah.
In fact, I got a book from Barnes and Noble. And it's called. I think it was written by Brian. What's that guy that doing? It's called "We Promise You a Great Main Event."
Okay.
And so it's got Triple H on the front, and it's not right here, but yeah, like I said, it's got it's a great book, and so it gives the details of the history of wrestling under Vince McMahon's watch, ever since Vince McMahon Senior to to Vince McMahon Junior, from the days of Bruno to Hogan to like steroid stuff and Attitude Era, everything like that. And
does it talk about Vaughn when WWF was born in DC?
I believe it does. Yeah, well, it was
Okay.
Capital Wrestling
Yes.
Corporation.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So as far as that, like I say, it covers. I think it does, but it covers so much. Like I'm talking about, like in terms of the ups, downs, the controversies, you name it. It's very unfiltered. It's very, straight to the point. And the illustrations were by Lauren Moran. So I just want to throw it out there, a shout out. But yeah, but the thing about it is that also one more thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a little bit of name association. I'm not going to go through time. A few names. Ric Flair.
Unspoken. I mean, the name alone. And how do you associate Ric Flair? I mean,
the gold standard.
You talk about blueprints. I mean, there you go.
The ultimate blueprint. Hogan.
Same thing. Same thing. And it's good that you mentioned those two, because again, when you talk about Mount Rushmores or what have you there, I always look at it as two islands, right? So for instance, when you talk about comedy, you had I used this analogy at one point. You had a Richard Pryor island and you had a Bill Cosby island, right? At that time, when you look at who would you put in that Bill Cosby island, where you may want to put your Flip Wilsons and your Sinbads. Whereas if you're on the Pryor island, you put Red Fox, you put Eddie Murphy, you put Martin Lawrence, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Cat Williams, and you put Kevin Hart on there now. I mean, names like that. So I always look at pro wrestling and the fact that you got a Flair Island and you got a Hogan Island, and then again in the Hogan Island you may want to put Austin and Rock and Cena, and then Flair you put Dusty, you put Taker, you put Brett, you put Shawn, you put Triple H, you put Kurt Angle, you put those names. So
Jericho.
again, you know, um, it's a beautiful thing to be a wrestling fan. It's a beautiful thing to see how names like that shaped what made you become a fan, but understand the fact that there's a reason why everybody is in someone's top 5 or top 10 or Mount Rushmore, however you want to call it. But at the end of the day, if they're recognized as being the greatest of all time, then yes, that would be warranted as to why people have these different perspectives.
That's true. That's true because, because the way that you said names like Flair and Hogan and Dusty shaped your perspective. For me, it was like your Bretts and Shawns and Stone Colds and Takers and The Rock that shaped mine as well. So a couple other names. The Rock.
I mean, that's pretty much the ultimate. I mean, people can say that when it comes to understanding what kind of business mindset you have a guy that is a part of the greatest family in wrestling to becoming the biggest superstar in the history of Hollywood, and of course having all these other ventures from XFL to his own beverages don't hurt either. So another ultimate blueprint.
Yeah. I got two more.
Okay.
Austin.
Ultimate blueprint.
Another blueprint.
I mean, you always talk about pro wrestling being like a dance, and you gotta have two to tango. Rock wouldn't have been really where he would without Austin.
That's right. That's right. That's absolutely right. That's his eternal dance partner. As much as people want to throw Triple H in there, it's ultimately when it comes to the way that they move the business forward, the way they move the needle. Three WrestleManias.
Yeah.
That WrestleMania trilogy carries it on its own. You know what I mean? So so of course Austin took the business and propelled it to him, and Rock propelled it to unbelievable heights.
Yes.
And they are like the yin and the yang, like Tupac and Biggie, Batman and Superman type of thing. They're forever synonymous. And one more name. I respect your time. Shawn Michaels.
I mean, that's pretty much the ultimate compliment to Ric Flair. HBK is on that Flair Island, as I mentioned, and he pretty much is that guy that proved to many that size doesn't always matter in terms of stature, in terms of physique. It's all about what you come to do to perform, and how you would make money for yourself and for the company, and how you got to convince the fans to believe in you and what you bring to the table. So HBK, another ultimate blueprint.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because the thing is, you look at his lineage when it comes to guys that he inspired. Your Chris Jericho's, your AJ Styles, your Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, Carmelo Hayes, Montez, Kofi Kingston, you name it. Like, you name it, they have at some point have watched Shawn Michaels grow up to say what Shawn watched Flair grow up. I mean, watch Flair growing up. And so I use the analogy when it comes to Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, like Michael Jackson, the Prince, right?
Correct.
And also when it comes to, like parallels speak for themselves.
Yes.
But also, we all know Michael was inspired by James Brown.
Yes.
Ric Flair was to Sean what James Brown was to Michael Jackson.
Sure.
And you can say Vince McMahon's the Quincy Jones of everything, but that's, neither here nor there. You know what I mean? So the thing is, like, I wanted to throw some names out there when it came to pioneers, when it came to Blueprint, when it came to guys whose careers still transcend. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And of course, in closing, where can they find you on social media?
Right here on all social media platforms. Doesn't change. That's where it goes to, at the Real Docta D.
Thank you very much, and of course, I'll definitely be there to catch you at BlerDCon. So thank you very much, and it is on Saturday, July 8th. I mean.
Correct. Saturday, July 8th.
Great. All right. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it. So it's been an honor to even have you on here, because I've been waiting for the longest time. I was like, now this is this is the perfect time. So of course, I respect your schedule. I thank you very much for being on my show, and look forward to seeing you on Saturday at BlerDCon.
Appreciate you always, Vaughn, for your support, and keep up the good work, bro.
Thank you very much. Likewise.
All right,